will be presented. Just to go through or remind all as we look at amendments, and we're continually project team, project committee. We're continuing to align funding with project deliveries. We look at project scope, the timing, continue to update project costs and estimates. And today we are really focusing on this plan amendment has a lot to do with the update to project costs and estimates, and then some master plan project listing or fundings. The sheet before you to focus on today or now is. Are you doing that or me?
Me, I was just trying to get the
Oh,
unmuted.
okay, sorry. This won't work. Because it's not on.
You may have to click on the PowerPoint. Yeah,
Give it back.
to give control back to it.
Can you just go next slide, please? No, the forward. This, okay, looking at, in this big sheet, this shows the financing plan amendment detail. To note, this too is net change to the financing plan. So what we're focusing on and what changed, not the amount that may be on the actual financing plan. But first off, last August, I believe it was August when the financing plan was amended, and maybe even before that, we were looking at a bond issue in the spring of 2023, and we had that as a revenue bond issue. And now we're switching to rather than a revenue bond issue, we're wanting to move that to a CO issue. Now, can you forward a few slides, Jenna? More. And I think this explains it well when we look at the series 2023 bonds. Originally, we had.
We've got has a handout for that. So.
Yeah. I'm skipping to that. Originally, it was the 23 TERS increment revenue bonds, meaning the increments of the reinvestment zone is what was the full credit pledge to that. And the bond issue was at 39 or real close to 39 million, in project funds of 35 million. And you see there what's on the list. But we also, to do that, we would be funding a reserve fund because it's a revenue bond. Just because of the timing of this bond issue and some other projects, economic development projects, one with the Pause of Meta, and some other big ones coming online or potentially coming online, we are switching to a CO bond, which is it has a tax pledge, but it will be revenues or supported by revenues of the reinvestment zone. And with that, we were able to increase the bond proceed issue by add 5 million to project funding and only increase the bond issue by 1.7 million. And over the life of the bond issue, it will save, go forward one. It'll save 10.2 million in interest costs. We don't have to fund the reserve. And those are just some annual changes in the funding there. So again, my PowerPoint may not be in the best order. I'm going to be hopping around. So that shows.
Tracy, I don't know. What is CO bonds?
It's a certificate of obligation, and it has a tax pledge. It has a tax pledge to it, but it can still be supported by revenues. It gets a higher credit rating because therefore you don't have to fund the reserve fund. You get lower interest rate, a little bit lower interest rate on it too.
Yeah, the other time that we were considering, Michelle it was just revenue based, but this one is revenue backed by the tax pledge. So that additional level of security, if you will, makes that difference, right, Tracy?
Correct.
The city takes on, so the city's general fund or general debt service fund takes on the backup, if you will, if for some reason the zone were to default, then under COs, we are required to use property taxes then to begin paying the debt back. And it goes against the city's debt limits, but there's benefits to both ways, and in this case, COs, we think make the most sense.
So does that mean that when we were originally looking at revenue, that doing it with a revenue bond, we prefer to avoid what you just said, that it takes it as it affects the city?
It can, and there's some other reasons strategically that doing revenue bonds that having a good mix, having a good mix to the both of them makes sense in terms of potential legislative action that you would have revenue bonds against the increment to maybe protect contracts that from future legislative action.
And also, as long as, we look at, when we're recommending the CO, the increments, we have the benchmarks that we want to make sure that we meet our times coverage, even with the CO. So the rating agencies do look at this as self-supporting debt, and it doesn't go against the city's capacity, as long as everything's good in the zone and the revenue outlook's good. Okay, can you back up, Jenna? So it's just mentioned there, the bond proceeds, we increased them. And this is looking at, we come up with 2023, we come up with $13.1 million that we can allocate to projects. And I'm going over what makes up each of those. The additional bond proceeds, not having to fund the reserve fund. We also had a debt service payment scheduled for 2023, and now the timing of this issue that we will not need that. And then we had some reallocation of project dollars. Pepper Creek wastewater extension with the equalization basin. Based on some preliminary discussions, we no longer will need that EQ basin. Or if we did, it would be at a future date. Also, we had planned for the upsize of the airport road truck sewer crossing construction of $1 million. That's no longer needed, or no longer needs to be upsized. We have some just leftover money on an airport grant match of $86,000. Art district concept design, just a small amount there. Melissa swept that in. And then we're also using part of our bond contingency that we originally planned. And looking over in 2024.
And so Tracy, to be clear, the items 9 through 12 were already in our existing financing plan, and we don't need them. So we're recognizing those as additional revenue or
Correct.
resources. Right. All right.
And then in 24, if we go back up to line 5 on the debt service, that just shows the savings on the debt service each year, noted here in the schedule. In infrastructure improvement synergy part, so a grant, infrastructure grant, we had that coming on 1 year earlier than we thought we needed it. So it's not needed until 2025 based on project completion. You'll jump down to line 31. I believe that's 3 or 4 years of payments. 3 years, we added it back to 2027. It's just moving those forward by 1 year. But getting into the proposed use of funds, and this is where we get into updating a lot of the OPCs or projects that have been added via master planning. Range Road, 24-inch transmission main construction that David Patrick has given us updated OPCs. We're adding $125,000 there. The Pepper Creek wastewater upsizing design and construction, that totals $3.3 million. That's an added project that we can discuss later. Wastewater expansion and reclamation planning. That was, I don't know if David or Brian want to explain that additional professional design fees there.
Sure, I'll be happy to.
Okay.
So what we've talked about quite a bit recently, I'm going to stand up. So our city back there. So, I think you all know we have two wastewater treatment plants that serve our community, Temple Belton plant and Dozier plant. The industrial park is served by both plants. So more or less, the dividing line is Winland Road. So anything west of Winland Road flows to Temple Belton, and then the rest to Dozier. Both plants are in need of expansion related to both capacity, certainly on the Temple Belton side, but we're also nearing some capacity considerations based on industrial activity in the North Industrial Park at Dozier. And then in addition to that, industrial pretreatment of especially things like BODs, but there are other constituencies to consider. So what we are proposing and would like to do is to have a contract with a professional engineer, KPA would lead the project for us to really understand what our best option is going forward in either expanding on the existing plants that we have, or making a determination that a third plant might meet our needs, and a specific industrial pretreatment facility might meet our needs, and really evaluating that to make a decision so that we can begin design of whatever the optimal solution is for our community's needs. It does take quite a bit of time to design, permit, and construct a wastewater facility or an expansion. And we're having lots of industry interest in the North Industrial Park. So it's a really important priority for us that we'd like you to consider.
Thank you, Bree. Next, line 29, in David Patrick KPA have been working on updating their OPC's opinion of probable cost for a construction project. And this is the I-30, or the outer loop from I-35 to Winland. It includes overpass over the railroad. We're increasing that by $5 million, bringing the total construction budget to $34.6 million. David, Patrick, you have anything to add to that?
Happy to give some color to it if you'd like me to. This is really just to catch up. We're today's market, everything's very fluid. And so we're constantly updating OPCs. This one specifically, the main element that's creating this is our bridge over the BNSF is a specialty bridge because of the right of way that BN has there. They have the ability to expand 2 more tracks within the right of way. So what that does is span over the bridge itself, creates us to have what I'm calling atypical pre-stressed concrete bridge. Concrete in general and precast especially is very high right now, but when you get into specialty items, they get even higher because people aren't making them constantly and putting them in the yard because there people don't ask for a long time. So with that, we've seen a pretty significant increase with that. Similarly, our retaining wall, because BN increased their, we used to have to do from top of rail to clearance, they increased it by almost 3 feet. So our retaining wall went up with that. We got to a level where we're in specialty panels as well for the retaining wall. So again, similar situation. We're into a specialty precast item where those costs go up. It's what we call atypical. So precast yards aren't just making them and sitting them there. They go as soon as they get done. They've got to bring that into production somewhere to make a specialty item, and with that comes cost. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. We're still hoping April, in April to go out to advertisement. I think last board meeting, our board had BN had gotten back with us. We immediately turned around that day, the request. We're pinging them constantly to get that release, but as soon as we get released, we'll go to bid. They originally had told me April, and I think they'll probably stick, not beat that date.
So you think maybe May, June?
Yeah, I think we're advertising it into April, 1st of May, and then we'll go through that process.
Okay, you think it'll be June probably to the board?
Yes,
Or is it?
oh, I hope so.
And again, our bond issue is trying to align with that too. Line 33 is another updated OPCs,
You say 33, Tracy?
Tower Road transmission main construction.
Yeah, and I'm happy to give some background on those as well.
Okay.
Good news, bad news. Good news is we recently bid and received a bunch of data as well as moving to construction on the Meta projects. Those are all moving forward now. So the good news is we got current data, especially on large diameter pipe sizes, which is what's happened with this transmission main that's going to feed Southeast Temple. Bad news is the numbers went up. So we did adjust based on that. We've adjusted the OPCs with that. Like I said earlier, that is unfortunately one of the things we spend a lot more time on than we used to because the market's so fluid that those prices are constantly changing. We certainly hope that once we bid this, that the numbers come down, but it would be irresponsible of us to ignore the data that we have from recent bids and not put that into our OPCs. So that's the cause of that, especially those large diameter pipelines, some of which are very difficult to acquire. One of our Meta projects was on a 6-month delay because you physically couldn't get the material. So those are just updated OPCs based on current unit price data.
And the expectation is still that those occur in FY 23, right?
The Meta or
This Tower Road transmission.
Tower Road
Piece that you're
transmission?
talking
Yes.
Are you seeing any appreciable difference in pricing, the sequence of going up and also the supply chain challenges? Are you seeing anything there?
So, unfortunately, Central Texas right now, we are not. It is as crazy as it's ever been, which is good and bad. Our economy does not seem to be slowing down from the work that we do. And of course, you see the things that are happening in the Austin area and North Austin area with those mega projects that are coming on. And unfortunately, you guys hired Adrian, who's just phenomenal at what he does. So he's doing the same thing. So we're not seeing that. We all know what's happening financially in the world. You keep looking for these things to go down, but we have some contractors that right now locally that are so busy, we're having to beg them to bid work. I mean, that's, unfortunately, that's the market we're in.
Thank you, David.
That's probably not the answer you wanted, Harry. It's true.
See the same thing. I mean, you keep seeing these inflation numbers and what they're trying to do.
Right.
But it just doesn't seem to be even on what things we're talking about. It doesn't seem to be even happening.
Correct. And our model isn't just Temple. We're up and down I-35 corridor, pretty far south. We don't do Austin. We skip Austin, but we go almost as far as Dallas. And that entire corridor is seeing the same thing. So it's not just here. It's, all of that, this I-35 corridor is seeing the exact same, unit price rates that we're seeing. So they're experiencing the same thing we are. Unfortunately, for a lot of those people, they don't have a zone. So they got to scramble.
Okay, line 35 through 42. In our original plan, we had, it was 2 or 3 projects. And it was to build a transmission line from the water treatment plant to the South Temple to serve South Industrial area, all the way to Lorraine Drive or Lorraine. And we brought in another project or accelerated the construction of that by dividing the lines into different sections. And the portion of that wanted to be moved up for design in construction admin, and it's under design, but we wanted to add the construction admin and construction dollars for 2024. And we broke that out of the other projects, the other 2 projects. And that total construction cost is $5.6 million, $5,685,000. We do have some of it showed in 2023. And that is an accounting item, because if we would let it roll to fund balance, it's bond proceeds, and we didn't want to do that. So even though it shows in 24, it's the whole project's, or 23, the whole project can't be let till 2024.
Okay.
You got the money split between the years, unless you broke it down in further. So I know we debated on how we showed that, but we didn't want to lose the bond proceeds in the fund balance.
And Tracy, if I may explain a little bit about why we would recommend considering accelerating the piece from 31st Street to Fifth Street. That piece will be constructed within the Georgetown Railroad right of way. And the city has received a grant and is actively working on the development of that trail section. So there's also quite a bit of private development in that area at this time. So it's our recommendation that while the area is under construction, both from the private side and from our public project, that we get that section done. So that later, once the trail is installed, we won't have to come back and disturb it would be more expensive than to put the water line in and then have to rebuild any of the trails and landscaping elements that were disrupted because of the trail section. And there would be quite a bit of that. So it is our recommendation that we try to get the 31st to 5th Street section done now so that the trail can go in after the construction of the water line and not the other way around.
Brian, line 35 and 39 is just David again has updated his OPCs. And those are out, those are out in future years. So with all of that, our total funding needs, for 2023, we identified where we're going to reallocate $13.174 million. And our needs are 11.974. And we do roll some of that over to 2024. But you can see the bottom line, the total funding needs match up to the total, or we have the funding to be reallocated to fund those projects. I think any difference just flew or went into your public improvements. If we had more funding to be reallocated, we didn't allocate it to one of these projects, we rolled it into the lump sum public improvements unallocated.
Any questions on our additional explanation? Preferred on that?
No, I
Okay.
don't think so.
All right.
Just out of curiosity, I'm thinking about, when I go that way a lot on South 31st Street and Fifth Street. And are they already starting something there on Fifth Street, like at the corner of Waters Dairy, I think, in Fifth Street?
In terms of a city project,
Yes, I see a lot of equipment there. I wonder if that was part of it. Is it kind of-
would that be the,
I think it's a residential development in that area.
well, there is a drainage project. I think it's the Friars Creek Railroad berm
Oh,
drainage project that you probably are thinking of, and that the intent of the project of what it gets to is fixing a drainage issue, but there is a pedestrian bridge as part of that project as well. So I think that's probably what you're seeing.
Okay.
The Georgetown Railroad Trail has not started yet.
Okay.
Construction.
As I left off the three at the bottom, installation of art. That was at the Avenue U. We took some money from Veterans Memorial Boulevard in order to keep from doing a financing plan amendment to fund that project. It was added. So now we're just backfilling that. And then it's estimated, I don't know if we'll need it, but just as wrapping up the FBO, additional 100,000 for various things there. And then Melissa had a small airport grant match for the NPE grant of 3,500.
And this installation of art doesn't include the one on I-35, right?
No, it doesn't.
Is that out now?
That's under design, David. That's the East-West Gateway.
Yeah, so design's complete. It's a coordination with TxDOT projects. We have to go through the way for the district offers for that. Plans are approved, and right now we're just going through the process of approving the actual contract documents that go through the TxDOT system. The art is actually done. We did that separately. It's sitting there ready to go. But that will be part of that project, and we really hope that TxDOT will turn that loose in the next 30 to 60 days, and we'll get that bid and under construction.
Tracy, the financing plan that we all have in front of us in our packet today I'm sorry, your small print exceeds my ability, my glasses to read it, so you'll have to help me. Does that include the proposed, or is this the one that's in place to be modified by what we're just discussed
This is the proposed.
with these adjustments? in it?
Yes.
Thank you. All
I think
right.
Melissa tried to highlight anywhere there was
Okay,
any type of change.
got it. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Again, what you have on this other sheet that we went over is net,
Right.
but this will show what it is. in the
Okay.
financing plan. Did you move that or me, Jenna?
I did.
I just wanted to go over the revenue and the reinvest or in the financing plan. Again, we have some additional out in 2020, 27. I'll go over it here in a little bit. The next slide. Just to know what we do have in the plan right now. We have 3 phases of Meta, and we all know that was Meta hit the pause button in December, went through some, they're going through some redesign and demo and going to begin constructing their new design soon. But again, we'll have to, revisit this again. What does it mean to how we have it in the plan? Next slide, please. And this is just, again, to show you what we did add to the plan. They committed to 1 phase. We took it at 3 phases and had it coming on, I think every 3rd year, the next phase was coming on. Next slide, please. Just in our financing plan now, in our revenue forecast, either it's hit the actual tax roll or we've forecasted it. We do have FedEx, we have phase 1 and 2 of Niagara, Sunbelt, Lingfield Lumber. Next slide, please. East Penn, their expansions. But a big one that we've just recently approved the tax abatement area is the automated freezer storage of HEB. We do have that in our financing plan currently. And here it's estimated at a 3 million capital investment. We have it at 200 million. And the year we have it coming on in the plan could be accelerated. You just got to find out exactly their completion date, but I did want to let you know that is in the plan. I haven't updated this, but the residential developments, I think we have 1 or 2 that we could add that's been added to the zone and platted since we last updated that. And then just going over the bond series again, we discussed what our original plans are, what our revised plans are, and how we added $5 million in project funds for only 1.7 to the bond issue. And that had some to do with just rounding up to 40 million even number. Next slide, please. I think I've already showed the savings on the life bond. Next slide. And this is where we look at our gross revenues, less our operating expenses, net revenue available for debt service, our existing debt, and then this column here, this column is the proposed issue, what that would look like, the debt service. And it's not straight line amortization, but it nearly is. There's only 2 years. We had to bring it down just a little because we want to maintain that 2 times coverage. And this is just an internal coverage, that's not our rate covenants. We do have a 1.25 or 1.50 coverage requirement. And just we've discussed in future planning, when we get our meta numbers nailed down, look at future capacity, because we do have some out there, but it's still the big uncertainty with Meta of what their revenue stream will look like or how they'll come online. Next slide. Just looking at the reinvestment zone's outstanding debt. It shows in 2024, we'll pay off that issue. We had a refunded issue, but our total outstanding debt, including interest, is $277 little over 277 million with this proposed issue. And then the principal outstanding is 176.9 million. All of these, most of these bonds do have call features on them. Several of them call in 2030 and 2031. And that's something we can look at, at what point, if we ever wanted to call and pay them off, or we're going to look at some scenarios with that too. So next slide.
Tracy, if I could go back, that, and it may be on one of those columns again, hard to make out from this distance.
Yeah.
What your total that you were noting on the far right hand, that is total amount of debt service, including interest carry, right?
Correct.
Do you have a column that shows just what I call the principal balance? Is that-
Yes, I do. I have a row
Yeah,
for
okay,
each issue. It shows the print down here at the very bottom.
okay.
And I can share that actual schedule with you too.
Okay.
Um,
And that would be, after this issue, what would be the total principal? Of
176.9 million.
Gotcha, okay.
And this one would be the par, they ran it, the par would be 37.9 million and issued at a premium in order to get the project funds of 40 million. And next slide.
I got a question for you, Screen. Is it common to show the anticipated interest and principal and number? And, or is that just something?
I just show it to show it.
Okay.
Because it is the annual debt service really is what I'm showing. I can break it up into, undo a principal one and a interest one and then a total.
I mean, to your point,
Yeah.
when I saw the 270, I thought that was our debt
I
obligation.
think it might be a requirement of the state in our
Is
annual
it? Okay.
report. I think we have to.
I do think it would, to your point, Bob, have value for us to see both numbers.
Okay, I can do that. Someone have a question? Just a timeline for our bond issue. This proposed amendment will be going to the Reinvestment Zone Board March 22nd. First reading on April 6th, the City Council. And also at that meeting, the City Council will consider a resolution directing the publication of notice of intent to issue these COs, along with some COs of the city too. We have two notices that appear in the paper, April 9th, April 16th. We'll go through our bond rating conference calls on May 22nd. Get our ratings in beginning of June. And the actual sale of these bonds will occur June 15th with proceeds delivered July 11th.
Tracy, the sequence of those dates and times, let's compare those to, again, anticipation to bid for the outer loop and awarding a contract. How does that need to align, or is that?
Yeah, anytime after, on June 15th, when on the actual day of the sale, once
Right.
the sale's
Right.
completed, then we could award, a contract could be awarded in that.
And that lines up with us.
That's, yeah, okay.
Oh,
What's the anticipated interest rate?
I think 4 or something, Bob. Let's see here. I don't have it here, but I'll find out what he ran the actual numbers on to get those to you. Has went up a little.
Isn't that wildly volatile in the moment? Or is
Not-
that not, or these type of things not quite as volatile?
They haven't been in the long term, with the longer term rates haven't been. But we've seen some volatility in it too. And just, I know when all the labor reports and stuff come out, sometimes it will have an impact on the rates. I can show, just a chart of the history of just what that volatility looks like. I'll send y'all one page, and you see that line.
But I guess in general, the financial strength and strong condition of the city helps mitigate that somewhat, less
Right.
volatile than it otherwise might be.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Next slide. That concludes the information I wanted to present for the financing plan amendment. There is one that I'd like to discuss in executive session. I need,
Gary has some language that he'll read in for us.
Yeah, we need to make sure is all of the discussion on the other items complete.
Sure. Any questions or additional discussion or? Again, the intent is that if there's no suggestion or proposed changes to this in our group, that this is what will go to the full board. And so now would be that time to raise questions, concerns, suggestions. Okay,
Not specific to this, but looking for if we needed additional bond issue, the next 6 months for additional project, do we have capacity? Or that you think?
back up, Shannon.
I know we had that coverage that we were just a little bit there, we were 2, and then it jumps up to 3 and 4 times pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah, that would, assuming, again, the meta numbers, we've got to work on those to see what that looks like. If those were similar, very similar, I mean, you do have some capacity that you could work or build into in the next 6 to 12 months. And, not a lot, but you do have some.
and I guess related to that, there's obviously a kind of, you get economies of scale when you issue a larger bond versus some little small ones. What's sort of the minimum level that makes sense in today's world for us to consider even a bond issue? I mean, does it need to be 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, or what are your thoughts on that? Because you have some base overhead that comes regardless of the size, so.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that with true numbers, but just from the hip,
Yeah.
I'd say not less than 10 million.
Yeah.
If you were doing like a limited tax type note on the reinvestment zone,
Mhm.
those are 7-year. So we do go lower on like a 7-year issue versus the 25-year
Mhm.
issue. And we do have, this is still a 25-year amortization too on this one.
Any other questions? If not, well, let me read the information and we'll go into executive session. So pursuant to Texas Government Code, section 551-072 and 087, project committee may meet in closed session to discuss or deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, if deliberations in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governmental body in negotiations with a third person. Discussion or deliberation, commercial or financial information received from a business prospect that the government body seeks to have, locate, stay, or expand in or near the city of Temple, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to such a business prospect. No final action will be taken. So with that,
Gary, I
Yeah.
just had a typo in there, I apologize. It's the finance committee that's going into executive session,
Okay.
not the project committee.
There you
So
go.
with that,
okay. you're right.
please
Okay.
continue.
Thank you.
Apologize for that.
Okay. And I think that, again, addresses the reporting requirements.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So now we will close if you'll give us a second to
Okay.
close the open